Oh, so it's basically every AEW match ever. After admittedly a bit of a cheap little recap of Karu's many feats as him pondered his next course of action, we thankfully cut to the show proper and some really nice animation. Yeah, I'll say right now, some of the line work in this episode was really good and definitely some of the better work of the animation director Masumi Abe. Anyway, almost all of Kaoru's family was up and enjoying their breakfast, except for her dad, Mask de Tokyo. Yeah, as has been seen throughout the series, the dude was a luchador who really lived his gimmick. I think he might be based on Ultimo Dragon, one of the most well-known Japanese wrestlers, who practices lucha libre, and surprisingly still hasn't retired as of the time of this recording. Anyway, Kaoru was curious of what her father looked like without the mask, so she tried to take it off. Paying tribute to the great Antonio Inoki, I see. Good form there. But yeah, he managed to get a submission victory over Kaoru with a bear hug of all things. Not an impressive finisher, though at least he does better than the Yeti. Later, Kaoru told her friends about her little predicament. With her father refusing to unmask until his retirement, she only had old photos to rely on, which were of no help as they must have been taken by the worst photographer ever. Fortunately, a walking Chad meme managed to take her mind off of her dad. Hakemi Soriyun approves. This episode might be a reference to Butter Crush, the series debut episode of the Gangrene Gang. Granted, this anime's version of the characters also debuted in a Bar Cup episode, but thankfully there was no problematic romance between the young heroine and the middle-aged looking villain. However, Kaoru wasn't confident in her abilities to pick up a guy as she had lived as a tomboy for most of her life. Thus, her friends, who somehow knew he was their upperclassman, dude looks more like he's in his 20s, decide to help her. Also, didn't you cause a little bit of an intergalactic incident because of your Eureka pickup skills? Anyway, the guy's name was Naruo Narushima, which is only slightly less so than this dude's name. And as luck would have it, he was looking for a girlfriend, but for the most part, their tastes didn't exactly match up, except in one area. Well, obviously the next question should be who his favorite wrestler is. FYI, mine right now is Sami Zayn. However, he also had a preference for Yamato Nadeshiko, or the more traditional, reserved Japanese lady. And with only one of those adjectives applying to this tomboy, all seemed lost for Kaoru. Fortunately, she had a friend who actually had Yamato Nadeshiko listed as one of her TV tropes. For starters, they dressed her up and out of her baseball cap that just kind of appears out of nowhere. And this resulted in, okay, who's this new character? Nah, of course it was Kaoru, who managed to make simps out of the profs. Thus, it was enough to get swole narcissist to accept her invitation to a date. They agreed to go to a wrestling event where his favorite guy was main eventing. Said wrestler was known as Giant Panda Mask, who might be a reference to Tiger Mask, a legacy competitor that's had 7 different guys take up the mantle with the 8th one on the horizon. And just like the 3rd incarnation of the character, his match was going to be a mask versus mask, where the loser would give up their mask persona. And of course, his opponent turned out to be Mask de Tokyo, which left Kaoru split and him with an evil plan. The next day, Kaoru finally learned about how her father originally got his current persona. Well, that's what happens when you try to compete with Brock Lesnar during his reign of terror in NGPW. Having gotten tired of being treated like a career jobber, Tokyo decided to leave Japan to compete and learn the ways of lucha libre overseas. Fun fact, this was kind of a thing IRL when NGPW would send their developmental talent, or young lions, to study abroad in their affiliate promotions in the US, Europe, and Mexico. Well, so it's worth noting that the young lions go through a lot of arduous and kind of abusive crap just to garner a little screen time. It's fascinating stuff that I do recommend you look up. Still, the overseas excursions do tend to be one of the last steps to stardom, as they usually build new gimmicks and characters there. Of course, nowadays they're kind of trying to scale it back a little, but at the same time, it is still interesting to learn about how some of these guys got their big breaks. You know, in spite of being stuck with a few lame gimmicks along the way. Damn it, TNA. However, we then got, unfortunately, one of this fun little still shows more realistic moments. As it turned out, Tokyo was ostracized by the rest of the locker room for just being a foreigner to their country. The one person who didn't show him any hostility and tried to be friends and even mentor him, of course, turned out to be the guy who he eventually got the mask from. Though he wouldn't get through a traditional passing of the torch, but rather because the luchador had to go into early retirement after a match with, yeah, okay, that's just Jushin Thunder Liger. That's an easy mask to recognize. But yeah, even though Tokyo had a chance to save his friend from his career-ending injuries, the luchador rejected it, as this was also a mask versus mask fight. And since it ended in a draw, both competitors were allowed to preserve their legacies, but one would have to retire. However, Tokyo would carry on his mentor's legacy and mask as he returned to Japan and became a successful wrestler in his own right. Seriously, why is it that the WWE and AEW can't give us great characters like this anymore? Ironically though, in spite of that sob story, Tokyo was wrestling as a heel, even coming out like the Sandman. But yeah, the day of the big match came, and Kaoru was still split between her dad and her boyfriend, though I'd say it became pretty clear who she needed to be cheering for. Yeah, Kaoru, you should totally dump this dude, he's just a mark. Not to mention, it was pretty clear that they were trying to pull Bret Hart and Austin-esque double turn with Panda Mask using some very heelish tactics. Or maybe there's something else to it. Maybe that was why Rock delivered all those unprotected chair shots to Mankind. Oh no wait, I forgot. Dwayne Johnson in general is just an asshole. But yeah, while Miyako and Momoko gave us a nicely done dual variation of their transformation, Kaoru did the right thing by both dumping this mark and helping her father. However, him then took total control over Panda Mask and turned him into Frieza's second form. Thus the girls tried to help take him down. Hey, I don't blame the dude. Run-ins have become way too commonplace in wrestling these days. And sure enough, he managed to win the match with an impressive looking sit-out powerbomb, legit one of my favorite finishers ever. And the girls destroyed the possessed mask, even though I'm pretty sure the winner is supposed to keep that as a trophy, but whatever. With that, the episode ended with Kaoru fully dumping this dude, both because she did want to totally change herself just for a guy, and she also preferred guys like her dad, which after getting a little peek at his face, yeah, you know what, let's not dig any deeper than that. So yeah, obviously, I like this episode a little more because of my affinity with pro wrestling, but even then, this was also a good spotlight episode for Kaoru. For one, we got to see her not act like just a total tomboy, and try to embrace different sides to herself, even if they didn't stick. Moreover, we got to see her form a deeper bond with her father, arguably the most influential person in her life. Moreover, Tokyo is just a cool character with a better gimmick than a lot of modern wrestlers these days. While it's easy enough to dismiss her as just a loner tomboy, which Kaoru kind of has been throughout the series, there is a little more to her. On top of clearly having gotten closer to her teammates, she also does seem to deeply care about her family, especially her father, who she admires. Thus, like him and his pursuit of a wrestling persona, Kaoru still does need time to figure out what she wants to be. Thankfully, she didn't make any drastic changes, and certainly not for a lame-ass wrestling mark, but the fact that she experiments a little is also admirable. It certainly helped that her father and his great backstory gave her a little inspiration. Seriously, while it was just a small part of his story, I do really like that they didn't back away from the fact that Tokyo did experience discrimination in a foreign land, especially while working in an industry as cutthroat as pro wrestling. It certainly added to his relationship with the original owner of his mask, and his win over the him particle-infected wrestler was all the more satisfying. Thus, overall, this was a fun and kind of insightful episode for the father and daughter of the Matsubara family, especially if you're at least a casual fan of pro wrestling. For me, it's probably the second best thing next to another season of Lucha Underground. Next up on the docket, we might do another Magical Girl Spotlight just for the heck of it, as the last one did get some decent numbers. Won't say what it is just yet, but I will say we do appreciate all the suggestions y'all provide in the comment section, and we'll consider some of them as long as they're not too far out of left field. And until then though, fair for now my friends, and did somebody forget to give Tony his meds this morning?